Here are all the materials needed to make our practice baskets. I'm going to be making two different designs. The cheapest one is under $30 for all new materials. That's going to be using the towels. And then I'm going to switch out the catching device with the rope and the hose. It's kind of an upgrade, a little bit more expensive, but much cheaper than chain. And at the end, we'll see how well they catch. Here are the materials needed. You can just pause the video here for untreated and here for the treated materials. And here's what we're going to build. Pretty easy so far. I cut 8 pieces out of my 1x8 8-foot board, 22.5 degree cuts, and the outside length on each piece is 11 1/8 inches. That will be the basket. I've got the basket nailed together, and now it's time to make the bottom. I'm going to be using the 1x6. The full width is 27 inches. I'll need 3 pieces that long and then 2 shorter pieces for 5 pieces total on the bottom. I'm going to cut the first piece for the middle, and then I'm going to drill the hole before I nail it in. That hole will be so the basket can slide onto our post. Alright, I've got my base. These 3 pieces here are 27 inches long and go end to end, and then the last 2 pieces wound up being 19.25 inches long. So what I'm going to do is this center board, I'm going to drill a hole right in the middle for the post, and then I'll flip it over, draw some lines, and cut these pieces off so that they match right on the edges, and then I will nail them in. I've got my center board drilled with a 15/16 inch hole that the 3/4 inch conduit will go in, and then I put my other boards here underneath, drew lines on them so I know where to cut. I'll cut those out and then nail them to the base. I've got all the bottom pieces nailed on, and now I'm going to cut some 2x4s to make braces across the bottom. These will make the bottom a little stronger and also give support for the pole. I'm going to use the post to make sure this is lined up properly. I drilled my hole. I'm going to use the post here to make sure that it's perfectly vertical. There's a little bit of play. So I'm going to use the post in here and keep that vertical, and then I'll nail this piece down. There'll be one more block on top of this, so we have lots of height to make it stable, and then we'll put 2 more braces. This one's 27 end to end. We're going to do 2 more braces, 21 inches each. And then off of those 21 inches, the last piece will be 5. That'll go right here as a block. This is the second basket that I've done, and instead of putting my support on the bottom, an extra piece, I got a nice flat base here. These are pretty nice for carrying around and using at events as extra baskets. So I'm going to leave the flat bottom the way it is with these 3 pieces and put my support on the inside, just like that. And we have our basket finished. Now I've taken my other piece of 1x8. I've cut 22-inch long pieces, 3 of them. I found the center of the middle one and drew a circle 22 inches in diameter. This 1x8 was a little thin, I think, so we're going to have a little bit of a flat spot on the 2 ends, but I want to have the widest possible basket that I can on top with using these 1x8s. So I'm going to cut along those circles, and you don't need any special thing to cut. I'm just going to cut with my chop saw until I've worked off that whole corner. And then to draw the circle, if you don't have a compass, you could just use the trick with a string and pencil in the middle, a string and another pencil, and just draw with that string at the right length. Alright, I've got my chain support cut out in a 22-inch circle, and at this point I'm going to try to explain what I'm doing, because I'm going to be making 2 different models. I'm going to be making the cheapest practice basket model, and that's going to use the towels, and then I'm also going to use a pretty darn cheap version with the rope and the hose. That's going to require a bunch of holes in the top to tie the rope to. The towel design doesn't need any holes, but before I start fastening the supports to the top of this, I'm going to drill my holes for the ropes so that I don't put nails into any of the places that I need to drill holes. Here I've finished marking out the map where I'm going to drill holes for the ropes to hang down. And this is so that I'm going to drill the holes and then put my supports on here so that I don't put nails where I need to drill my holes. This is where the clock printout comes from. All I've done is printed out a clock face online and I'm putting a nail right through the center into the center of the board, and then use this as a template. And all I did was then lay my meter stick on here, and I came in and made my 12 outer holes right on the hour. I came in 1 inch on those ones, and then for the inner chains, there's 12 inner chains. You just need to come halfway between each hour. The outer middle ring I went with 3.5 inches in, and then the inner ring I went 6 inches in. So we have 12 around the outside, 6 intermediate, and 6 on the inside. That's where I'll drill my holes. And once I'm done drilling my holes, I will nail in the supports. Alright, so I've drilled my 24 holes, and I've also cut my pieces here for stabilizers. This one's 21 inches, and then I've cut 2 that are 12 inches each. I've rounded off the corners so that when discs come in, they don't hit real sharp corners, so keep your putters from getting gouged. These will cover up 1 hole. This one's going to cover up 2 holes plus the center, and then 1 hole here. We drilled our holes first so we can put our nails in and not go where the drill holes are. Once those are nailed in, we'll drill these holes that are covered up through the supports so the ropes can be tied off on top. Alright, I have attached my supports and I've drilled the holes back through. I've also drilled the center hole. Now I have my full basket top that can slip over the top of the pole. Working on the base here, I took my 4-foot and my 8-foot 2x6s. Took the 4-foot, cut that in half, and I made these 2 legs. And I took my 8-foot piece, I cut a 25 and a 22-inch piece. Those are going to go on the top and bottom, and then the remaining piece I cut in half, and then I cut those in half again at a diagonal, and those are I'm going to use for my cross braces. I'll nail it all together and show you what it looks like. So I've drilled my 2 holes in the center of the top and bottom board, and then I'm just nailing in these angled supports. So what I've done is I have my post sitting in my base, and I put the basket onto the post and dropped it down until the top of the basket was at the right height, and then I made a mark underneath the basket where it needs to rest. I'm going to drill a hole through this, and then all we need to do is put a pin. I'm going to use a nail through that, and the basket will be able to sit right on top of that nail. Just to illustrate, here we have the post with a hole drilled through and a nail. Nail's not going anywhere. You can get more fancy and use a removable pin for taking the basket up and down a lot if you're going to be moving it, but these pins work really nice. So here we have the basket just sitting on that pin, and then I have the top also.
I really
on
like
here.
how well this basket catches for the price and how easy it was to put together.
Measure
the towels overlapping,
20 inches
made for a good design. They would allow
of the basket
discs to come in, and the ones
bottom
that
of
got
the
inside
chain
would
rack.
get caught on the
And we'll
back
make a
side.
mark there. We'll put another
If you went with some
notch
brighter colored towels, I think
through our
you'd be able to
post,
see this
another
basket
pin,
from a
and that'll
long
hold the
ways away.
basket top on. I've attached the top just like I did the bottom with just a pin going through underneath the chain rack. I'm going to cut the post to length now, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a nub so I can drill a hole, and that way you can hang it from a rope, such like I have here, onto either a tree or in your garage. And then I'm going to cut up my towels. I'm going to try that option for a very cheap catching device. I've got my 2 towels here. They're 27 inches by 52 inches long. I'm going to cut them into 6 strips going this way each, and then I'm going to attach them at the bottom with the coat hanger and the top with some staples. Alright, I have my 12 pieces of towel here. What I'm going to do is thread the bottoms together. I'm going to alternate colors, and you can use either a metal hanger or some wire. You could use a needle and some fishing line or some thin rope and thread that through the bottoms of all the pieces of towel, and then close that loop so we have the bottoms all connected. So you can see I've strung my wire through each one just like this, about 1 inch above and from the side of each corner, just once through each side. Then I'm going to connect the wire together. I have my towels connected by my loop of wire strung over the center post. I have 6 of each color. I'm going to have the blue on the inside, the gray on the outside. All I'm going to do is connect the top now like this with a staple. You could also use a nail, like with a big head, or a screw with a decent pan head on the top. Connect these just like this. Just to show the spacing here, I have all the blue ones connected and some of the gray ones. The blue ones span wider than 2 of the outer chains, so you have a small gap. And then you overlap the second color and attach those as well. Again, I'm using staples because it's quick and I had them, but you could also use the nails that you bought with everything else. And here we have our towel-based practice basket. Something I like to do on these practice baskets is round off these corners with some sandpaper, here especially too. It'll put dings pretty quickly in your base plastic putters. But there we go. We'll get some video of some putting and see how it handles.
This basket caught better than the towels, maybe not quite as good as chains, but it was important to get a heavier hose to use. I made sure to get a medium duty hose. Light duty hose would be slightly cheaper, but I think the weight really helps to catch the discs, more similar to what chains can do.
I'm going to start the second part of the design using the rope and my hose. I'm going to take the hose and cut it into 12 sections that are 26 inches long, and then 12 sections that are 22 inches long. Those are going to make my outer and inner rows of chain. Once I have those sections cut into 26 and 22 inches, then I will chop them up into about 2-inch sections. By cutting out the lengths first, I can make sure they're equal length for each of my 24 sections. Then I'll thread them onto the rope and tie knots on the top of the holes that I drilled for my chain holder. I have my 24 pieces of hose. I have my rope, and I made another metal ring. This is just with wire. You could use a clothes hanger. A couple loops, wrap it around, and you have a metal ring. I'm going to tie the end of the rope on here, and then I'll cut up each individual section, thread it onto the piece of rope, and I'll cut that rope off, with leaving myself enough room to tie knots on top of the basket. I'm putting together my hose and rope setup. I took my large pieces and cut them into chunks. I've threaded the rope through the hose, and then you can see it attached to the wire ring just like this. With the rope through the hose, I've got a knot here. This pulls tight, and then all my links will hang down. And then we just need to tie each one to the top like this. Here's our finished basket with the rope and hoses. Got all of them attached, just with knots on the top. Really the only thing down here, it's tough to tell, but my 4-inch loop was just barely big enough They're really tight and it doesn't really allow for a lot of play in between here, but they all fit. Using this design, tying the ropes on the bottom and tying knots on top allowed me to not use any fasteners. The fasteners are really what make these practice baskets homemade to be really expensive. So just nails, holes drilled, and tying the ropes made this still a really cheap option. Here's our finished project. Well under $30 if you use the hanging option with standard lumber. You can also upgrade to the treated lumber if it's going to be exposed to the elements. You can build that base for a little less than $10 if you're going to be using it outside, portable. You can upgrade from the towels to the hoses and ropes, which I thought caught really well. Almost as well as chains, I would say. And the towels actually caught pretty well also. And the finished project broken down, pretty easy for travel. The top fits right inside the basket. You can easily fit this inside of a car. You don't have to build a base, even if you're going to use this outside. You can just take this tubing and cut the bottom at an angle and use it as a stake. Just be careful when you're pounding that stake into the ground. This electrical conduit tubing is not very strong, so you can deform the top and have trouble getting your pieces on if you deform the top. But other than that, thanks for watching. Comment with any questions and let me know how this project goes for you if you decide to build one. Thanks.